Our next speaker is Vijay Balan, who is the Director of Scaled Growth for Business Platforms at Facebook. Vijay leads publisher growth at Facebook Audience Network. In this capacity, he's responsible for driving global publisher acquisition for all Facebook publisher solutions. He's also responsible for all ad tech partnerships globally for Facebook, which also drive supply growth Audience Network. He previously ran global business development for enterprise market customers at Facebook. He came to Facebook as part of the acquisition of LiveRail. As Senior Vice President of Global Operations and Services at LiveRail, he was responsible for global customer operations. As a pre-revenue employee at LiveRail, he was vital in setting strategy in product, customer, and pricing, responsible for the build-out of the operational structure of the business, which contributed to the exponential growth in revenue and customers in years to come, eventually drive to profitability, culminating in successful acquisition by Facebook. Without further delay, Vijay, over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you guys are joining from. I'm really excited to be here. Really good group of people. And thank you for the intro. There's really nothing more to add here other than, in addition to my day job, I spend a lot of time still working with startups. I invest, I mentor. It keeps me connected to the startup environment, and I learn a lot from that as well. In terms of today's session, I think we've got about an hour and a half, maybe a little bit less, since we've got to move some things around. But we're going to do a few things. I'll kind of start off with a little bit of a hypothesis around digital transformation and how I've had the opportunity to do it at Facebook and other places. What I've learned about digital transformation during my time working with several companies, large and small. We'll kind of keep it fun. There's some games in here, so we'd love to make sure you guys are awake, and so we'll do some interaction. And this is by no means a one-way conversation. So unmute yourself and speak up if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer them as we go along. There's no rules. If you disagree with anything I'm saying, even better. My hope is that I can learn as much from you all as you can learn from me. So that's how this is designed. So we're going to do some of that. Then we'll jump into a case study, which I think will be interesting and relevant. We'll test some of the ideas that we've spoken about. And then we'll kind of analyze the case a little bit. So I'll throw up a Mentimeter. So for those of you that are on a device that's not a laptop, maybe about 45 minutes in, it'll be great if you can fire up your laptops. We'll do a little survey, a real-time survey, so we can, look at how people are thinking about it. Usually, when pre-COVID, this would be an investment exercise. So I kind of, give you guys fake money, and we'll go and make some investments, and we'll, talk about it. So we're going to try and simulate as much of that as we can in this online environment. So, please. Bear with me if, technology doesn't, cooperate, but I think we should be okay. So if for some reason you're not able to either see my slides or hear me speak or, get to the Mentimeter, just raise your hand and talk. I'm on two different machines, so hopefully I should be able to, troubleshoot. Does that make sense? Anyone have any questions? Okay.
I'll lift you up.
Awesome. All right, let me just raise my volume here just a little bit so I can hear everybody. Great. So let's get going. I want to start off a little bit with some ancient history. So if you guys were doing this presentation in 1990, about 30 years ago, you would have someone speaking to you from one of these companies. These companies represented the cutting edge technology companies of their time. They were well ahead of their peer set. They were intensely profitable. They occupied vaunted positions within the S&P 500. They were doing well. As you can see, though, is most of these companies don't exist at all. And Microsoft might be the exception here, but they are obviously a very, very different company than they were in 1990. They're no longer selling, Windows operating systems alone. They're doing a lot of other things. And those other things are really what's, keeping them afloat. So I want to focus on a year, 1994, which I think is a really interesting year. All of these companies on the 1994 row here were all started in that same year. Netscape, a browser, Amazon, a way to buy books online, Yahoo, one of the first and largest portals, Hotmail, the first company that was able to bring email to consumers, eBay, a marketplace to be able to buy and sell goods, Craigslist, classifieds, no longer on newspapers. All of these companies, every single one of them started in that same year, right? So what happened in 1994? The internet happened. In 1994, I mean, the internet existed before 1994, but for those of you, and I might be dating myself here, but I still remember the days where when I had to connect to the internet, I'd have to log onto a modem and it would make these weird noises and you'd have to wait for a little bit and you may or may not connect and you kind of like load up these images really slowly and half the stuff would load up and you hit refresh and go, take a bathroom break and come back, it'll still be loading the page. That was 1994, right? For those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, you're just too young. Good for you. But that was the state of the internet. And 1994 was when things started to become a little bit faster. We got to blazing fast speeds of 54 kbps. That was like the internet of the cool kids at the time. Now, when you fast forward to today, you see a whole bunch of new companies that are not the companies that existed in 1990, not the companies that existed in 94, with the exception of Amazon there. But the space has changed completely. You've got a single social network that connects more people than any other communication platform in history of time. You've got relative upstarts like Tencent that have effectively taken over financial payment systems in large parts of Asia. Airbnb, which does not own a single hotel, is responsible for 10% of lodging demand. And I can go on the list. Amazon, DiDi, Priceline, these companies didn't exist, and they all happened to be, to become really, really large companies really, really quickly. So we're going to spend a little bit of time trying to understand, yes, the internet happened, but what do these companies do differently that make them grow so quickly? We're going to focus on that a little bit. We'll learn some principles around how they got there, and then hopefully we can apply some of those principles later. So we talk about transformation, and transformation is a bit of a loaded word, and I'll come back to this in a little bit. Many people believe, especially within the startup environment, that it has to be a thorough or dramatic change in form or appearance. I don't believe this is the case. I think a lot of companies have done this without having to go through this kind of, complete transformation. But they've done so using some very important principles. And I think there are three that, for me, really define what takes these really upstart and small companies and made them so large. The first is they had a direct relationship with users. We'll drill into what that really means. Zero marginal cost to serve users. So, when you have one user and you produce a product, when you want to get a second consumer, you've got to make that product exactly one more time. If you've got 10 users, you've got to make them 10 times. But for a lot of these companies, that doesn't always necessarily hold true. And the third one is most important because for a lot of companies, including yourselves, acquiring new customers is where you spend most of your time and effort. On the other hand, these companies spend less time and effort acquiring new customers and still are able to be more profitable. So we'll kind of explore these three factors a little bit. Before I start, any questions, any thoughts? Okay, great. Direct relationship with users. Let's get started with that. So this is a screenshot I took this morning of my Amazon homepage, and please don't judge me. This is what my Amazon page looks like, but it basically tells me that I should be reading more books. I need to get some razor blades. I need to get some toothpaste, some coconut water, and I might be running out of batteries, and I need some nuts. Right now, if you think about all of these items that would have to be purchased in the physical environment, when you think about the concept of walking into your local grocery store or your department store, how is it organized? when you walk in on the first aisle that you walk into, do you see all of the products that you might need laid out in front of you for you to take? No. In fact, it's the opposite. Most products are like, it's like a little treasure hunt. You've got to, now you got to put your mask on, got to take your bag, and you got to walk around the whole store, because the store is organized around the store. The store is organized on making sure that people that stock the store have the easiest job to be able to get the items to the right places in the store. It's not organized around you, but Amazon is a store that's organized around you. It knows ahead of time what you think you may need. It analyzes patterns about what you've used and how long you would need to, consume that product. And it's recommending things that you may not even know that you need. It's effectively building your own shopping list as you go. And having a direct relationship with the user allows you to drive that kind of very high value precision and personalization. You're able to get to consumers to buy exactly what they want without having them be distracted. Let's do the second one. So for most of you, and I've noticed this myself, when you start watching a movie, when you turn it on and you hit play, for me, this is kind of what it looks like. Let me know if you think the same. Does that make sense? Is that how most movies start? There's like a whole bunch of people. I have no idea who these people are, right? But it's like a 10-minute montage with like a whole bunch of companies that seem to have had something to do with this, right? But when you go to Netflix and you hit play, there's some stuff that starts up. But what you instantly realize is that they have a direct relationship to you. And let's dig a little bit more on how that actually manifests itself and what it means for Netflix as a company. So first of all of those people that you saw there, they're just middlemen. They've contributed either financing or distribution rights for that film. And they're effectively taking a share of profit every time you walk into a movie theater, or every time you rent a DVD or you watch it online. But Netflix has effectively cut out that middleman. And with a direct relationship to you, they take a greater share of profit. The second interesting thing about having a direct relationship to users is that you've got better unit economics, which is to say that for every single show that you watch, you've already paid money up front. And from a unit economics basis, they don't need to do anything more than you having an internet connection. And they can serve you all of that content through that single pipeline. They don't have to build movie theaters. They don't have to print DVDs. They don't have to, put them on retail shelves and sell them. They don't have to spend a lot of money on acquiring new users every time a movie comes out. They probably do some advertising, but a lot of it is around advertising Netflix as a brand, as opposed to individual movies that come out every single time. You already are receptive. It's like you're walking into a movie theater and then you're searching for the movie that you want to watch. That's a very different unit economics. And the last one is a much better customer experience, because not only are they personalizing the content that you want to watch, but I've always had this notion, by the way, that when movies get made, and this may not be true, by the way, but when like movies get made, like a bunch of people, fat cats, get together in a room, they're smoking cigars and they're like, yeah, we should make this movie, or no, we should not make this movie. There's really no data here. But here, Netflix knows exactly if they want to make a movie, or they want to make a TV show like The Crown, or they want to make Jack Ryan, they know exactly how many people are going to watch that TV show before they even start making it. They know how many people watch shows like The Crown. They know how much time they spend on Netflix. They know how many people will watch, and then they can do the math backwards. They can say, oh, if I made a show like The Crown, I know for a fact that, 60 million people in the UK are going to watch it. That's great. Like you know your demand before you've even made the product. So the decision that goes into making your product changes fundamentally. That's based on demand as opposed to based on speculation. So this is a very, very important reason why they work really hard to maintain a direct relationship with their consumers. All right. Cool. Let's talk a little bit about zero marginal cost, and I'll use a slightly different set of examples. And there's examples for all of these companies do all of these things well. But just to hammer home the point, if you went back even 10 years ago, even in 2010, but certainly true for any time after 2000, if you're a startup and you were starting up a new app or a website or some kind of new idea, you would spend 80% of your capital on server cost. So if you built, let's say you're building the next Facebook, you would have to create a service, and you would start it out in, let's say, the East Coast, and you've got a few people on it. Let's say I sign up for Facebook, and I'm all the way out in San Francisco. They've got to either wait for me to connect all the way across the country with a really slow service, or they have to set up a server in California in order to get me the best access. And let's say someone signed up in Belarus. You've got to now set up a server there. Someone signs up in Brazil. You've got to set up a server there. So server cost was huge. That means that they would have 20% of money left to be able to make fewer bets. And every time a new person joined from a new geography, their cost would go up, right? Now, with the movement from this server-based environment to a flexible cloud like AWS, this is what an average company's server cost looks like. They spend a very small percentage to address the same set of users. They've got more bets that they can make. They can release more features more quickly to more users, and their marginal cost is very, very low. And they can keep doing that over and over again. Same thing goes for people that work in any company. So I'm sure all of you use some kind of productivity software, right? So let's look at Oracle and Salesforce as an example. So if you ever bought Oracle, and again, I might be dating myself a little bit. I used to sell Oracle back in the day, but if you were to sell Oracle or Siebel or any kind of customer management solution or ERP, your CFO would basically buy the software and they would write it off as CapEx. And that software would come in like a box with shrink wrap on it with a bunch of CDs in there. You take them out, you put them in, you load them up, and then you'd have to install the software. Then you've got to customize the software. When you're doing that, you're making a large commitment, and you're also, kind of agreeing to the sunk cost. So, for example, if you don't like the CRM software, well, too bad. You just have to use it because you've already paid for it. But on the other hand, you have something like Salesforce. If you don't like it, it's $50 a month per user. Stop using it. You don't pay the $50 a month per user, and you're done. You have you're effectively spending operating cost. You can fail fast. You can try out something if you don't like it. And the cost of, as your company grows, to get access to software is marginal. It's $50 per user per month, right? So you've basically changed the economics of the way your company spends money. And the last one, I think Uber is the best example. Does everyone have Uber or some kind of rideshare where they live? Does anyone not have it? Okay, great, right. So Uber is the epitome of where acquisition costs keep going down as they grow. So for example, when I used to use taxis, local taxi service, there's a couple that used to be here. I would make a phone call. I would ask them to come pick me up, and they would send a really crappy car that smelled of smoke and has not been cleaned for 10 days. And they would take me to the airport at a really overcharged price. But that was taxiing the day, right? Now I have Uber on my phone. I can request a service. Sure, it's a slightly better service and I get there quickly, but here's where the acquisition cost comes into play. Let's say I get on a plane and I go to New York. I get off the plane in New York. I open up my phone. I open up Uber and I order a ride. Uber has effectively now acquired a new customer in New York without spending any money. They have not acquired me in New York. They don't have to do that. As opposed to every other taxi company around JFK in New York would have to spend money to advertise to get me as a customer. Uber doesn't have to do that. And if I get off that plane in New York, I don't have to do that. If I have to get off that plane in Atlanta, I don't have to do that. I get off the plane in Sao Paulo, I don't have to do that. I get off the plane in London, I don't have to do that. So that over time, because I have the app on my phone, they're able to acquire me as a customer for no cost, no matter where I go. So those are three ways in which I think these companies tend to be fundamentally different. Any questions before we move on?
One, how about the more like brick and mortar kind of companies? How do you translate what you were talking about into that? Because I understand software as a service and maybe like taking stuff out, like what you said on like instead of using an ERP, use Salesforce, etc. But how do you translate that into beer, for example?
Well, you can drink beer online. I will give you that. I think if you guys can figure that out, that'll be pretty cool. We're going to talk a little bit about the change in how, and this, beer is an interesting, commodity, can be bought and sold as easily as other products. But we will talk specifically, the case study specifically focused on a brick and mortar company trying to make the transition or the transformation to being more online focused. So we'll spend a little bit more time on that.
Yeah, and I just and I just want to highlight, right, is that what Vijay was saying, that sort of as a service model, right? When everything like a server, you can think about as a hardware business, right? And I think everyone would back in the day say, well, it's a hardware business, it's a brick and mortar almost business, right? While in reality, a lot of things could be done as a service, like construction vehicles as a service has been done, right? The prototyping lab as a service have been done. Why not like brewing as a service could not be done? Why, for example, some portion of your factory could not be leased out to some small breweries out there who are trying to do their own beer, but they don't, but they don't have equipment or they don't have things to do it, and you can service literally your whole network, your whole you can do the whole brewing as a service, starting with equipment, supplies, and all of this, just sort of like lease it out to the certain companies, to the certain breweries, and charge them for that, something like that. Anyway, sorry, Vijay.
No problem.
No, but who was talking? I'm just curious. Sorry.
Vlas. This was Vlas.
Oh, hey. No, but there are services like that, brewing as a service, and there's several examples in the US about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a good provocation.
Great.
Sorry. Just can it be linked also like we pay today some licenses for some softwares, and these softwares has other capabilities that not everybody is aware of. But can we use that like an extension of the software? Like we pay already X amount per year to have the license, and then you have just to add some small license per module that we are not using and we are not aware of.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, I think you would have to look at your business need in order to be able to ascertain that. But yes, I think being able to, I think the concept here is that you're trying to offload as much of CapEx as you can over to OpEx. So if there's things that you are doing today in-house that can be more efficiently handled by an additional module, yeah, I think that would make a lot of sense. Cool. So I just want to ask a question to everyone here. So kind of coming back to digital transformation, what do you all think digital transformation is driven by?
Customer requirements.
Okay, cool.
Need, necessity. They said COVID was the major digital transformation driver.
COVID, yeah, need.
Advancement in technology.
Technology, okay.
Make life easier, if it's possible.
I love that. I love that. Make life easier. We're going to come back to that. Okay, so a big part of digital transformation is digital, right? So you've got real technology needs. I know when I jumped on the call, you guys were going through big data and data lakes and all the stuff that's kind of outside my expertise, but that's a big part of it. Let's look at how technology alone doesn't necessarily transform a business, and we'll try and explain why. So going back to my first slide, Yahoo went public 2 years after it was founded in 1996. It hits $125 billion valuation, which made it the second most valuable company at the time. They became the top portal globally. There actually used to be a tagline where it basically said 1 out of 2 internet searches start on Yahoo. So you started your journey on Yahoo. Yahoo was the internet in 2001. In 2002, they became the top search engine. And then after that, all the red boxes happened to them. Google came along. They took a market share for them. There were a bunch of websites that opened up that were more compelling than Yahoo. Their portal traffic dropped. They dropped number 3 after Bing, which must have really hurt because Bing was really bad. But this is kind of where Yahoo was when they brought in Marissa Mayer as a digital transformer. That was her goal. She was going to digitally transform the company. And here's kind of what she did. She bought a lot of technology. She bought a lot of talent. She bought a lot of what she thought was customer need, like people that were using other software. They made 38 acquisitions in 21 months, right? But here's kind of what happened with those acquisitions. They acquired 53 startups in total. They spent over $2.8 billion. They invested a tremendous amount of time and effort. Within a year, 33 of the companies that they bought were shut down. 11 products were killed. 5 of them failed to integrate. They ended up being acquired by Verizon for $4.8 billion, which is less than 5% of what they were valued at less than 15 years ago, right? So digital transformation, digital is one part of it. Transformation is a whole other thing, right? So we're going to play a game to try and assess what I think companies do well. So here are some categories of companies. Here are the incumbents, and we'll see if you guys can pick out the right disruptors. So let's start with banking and payments. So your banks are obviously the incumbents. Who do you think are disrupting the banks?
Everyone.
All of fintech, right?
No, the air banks, right?
Yeah, Venmo.
Yeah, like Venmo, PayPal.
Crowd lending.
That's right.
Transwise, yeah.
TransferWise, the neobanks, the fintechs, anyone that's basically facilitating payment, right? This is for the ladies in the room. Who do you think is disrupting Sephora in the cosmetic space?
No clue.
I think that there are a lot. Glossier, for example.
Okay. There's a few.
Or bio and organic products type.
That's right. That's right. One that I really like is called Birchbox. Anyone heard of them or use them? I know they're quite popular just in the US.
Googling right now.
Okay. So I actually found about Birchbox from my wife, and it was really interesting. And you know, the reason that I included this here is I think it really makes the point well, which is if you walked into a Sephora as a company is really focused on doing one thing, which is selling people new products. So when you walk into the store and you're looking to buy something, the person that's helping you, the salesperson that's helping you, is going to be really focused on selling new products. They're not going to be really focused on giving you samples because they don't make any money on samples.
Mm-hmm.
And here's some interesting surveys, right? 92% of women buy new cosmetic products after they've had a chance to try it out. Obviously, that makes sense. You want a product that suits you, your skincare routine, your skin color, your skin type, what you're using it for. All of that matters, and you want to try it out before you use it. But the process of getting samples at Sephora was bad because they weren't really focused on it for a long time. And Birchbox came along, and what Birchbox does is they basically, you sign up for a subscription box, $10 a month, and they send you samples. All they do is send you samples. You put in some information about who you are, what you want, what your skin color is, what your skin type is, and they'll send you samples. And the goal is they realize that once women were able to try out these samples, they were more willing to buy new products on their website. So they're like Sephora, they carry all of these brands, but they're able to capitalize on identifying the key pain point, which is women not having to having access to samples easily, right? We'll come back to this concept a little bit later. All right, video. Blockbuster's dead, obviously. Comcast is still around. Who do you think is disrupting video?
Netflix.
Apple TV.
Netflix. Yeah.
Amazon Prime.
Everybody. That feels like an everybody answer. Everyone that you got Disney,
YouTube.
You've got YouTube, you've got Time Warner Media. There's a whole bunch of people. All right, telecom. Your phone operator, your beloved phone operator in your home country.
WhatsApp.
That's right. Skype, WhatsApp, Zoom, like we're on right now, right? Fundamentally changed. What about automotive? Ford, Toyota,
Tesla.
That's right. Uber is doing the same thing. They're basically changing the way people think about car ownership, which I think is really interesting. All right, this is from Men in the Room. Gillette. Who's disrupting Gillette?
The Dollar Club.
Dollar Shaving Club.
Harris.
That's right. That's right. The Dollar Shave Club. That's right. The sad part is after they paid millions of dollars on actually acquiring Gillette, P&G was forced to acquire Dollar Shave Club as well, right? So the lesson here is my sense is that digital transformation is driven by unhappy customers. I think if you can find what makes your customers unhappy, you have an opportunity to transform their experience. And a lot of their experience can be touched and transformed in a digital way today, given where we are. So we're going to jump into a case. Any questions before we get there?
Vijay, maybe just sort of like a side question. So do you think when we think about the customers, we usually think almost about the final customer when it goes outside of our organization. But do you think that there could be a case made that the customer could be within your organization, and when we're trying to align organization internally for the transformation, this customer thinking should be applicable to sort of others who involved in your digital transformation journey? What is your opinion on that?
I think digital transformation is something that has kind of two forces. There's a top-down force and there's a bottom-up force, right? There's basically, CEOs will famously issue a memo saying, we need to invest in technology or we need to invest in digital transformation. What does that really mean? How does that actually translate itself into day-to-day operation? And then there's bottom-ups, which is you've got people on the ground who are talking to customers, or talking to distributors, talking to suppliers, and they have a view on what they should be doing. I think the most successful companies that are able to transform themselves are one that can understand what customers want and then be able to devise a strategy that helps them bridge the gap between the senior levels of the company and people that are on the ground, and everybody gets on the same page. Cool. So the case is basically about Walmart. This is a picture from a Black Friday sale, which is a vaunted American tradition that we fight over stuff that's on sale once a year on Black Friday. We're not very proud of it, but it's kind of what we do. And we're going to talk about what happened with retail, specifically to answer someone's question around how does some of this apply to brick and mortar stores. We're going to kind of flesh out a case there. All right. So just like I spoke about 1994, another year that I think is super interesting is 1962. So in 1962, these were the existing large companies that were out there. You had Macy's, that was by far and away the largest retailer in the US. Sears and Roebuck was massive. Saks Fifth Avenue was a great luxury, good store. JCPenney was growing like a weed. Like, these four companies commanded over 95% of retail sales. They were the largest, companies of their time. And they're really focused on three things: a luxury experience. When you walked into the store, you would be greeted by people that would be well dressed, and they would give you an experience of, you know, walking into a store. It was a very luxury experience. As you can see there in the JCPenney picture, you've got the family like really dressed up going to JCPenney. It was like something you did after mass on Sunday sort of thing, right? It's like you had your Sunday finest on and you went to JCPenney, right? It was a very luxurious experience. It was a time when a lot of new products were coming into market, so you would discover new products, and they would change their inventory depending on the weather, depending on seasons and traditions and stuff like that. So relatively slow turns of inventory, right? So here's what happened where people saw an opportunity to disrupt. So they said, well, do we really need a luxury shopping experience? That just feels like high overhead for selling well-known branded goods. You already know what you want to buy. Do you really care about buying it within a setting of luxurious experience? Well, maybe not, right? Yes, there's some level of product discovery, but customers are really drawn to low prices. If you're able to offer the same product at a much lower price without offering the great experience and doing all the product discovery, maybe you can get away with it, right? And instead of doing seasonal turns on inventory, what if you're able to provide a really wide catalog, be able to store as many products as possible in one place, and be able to move that product at high volume? In 1962, all of these four companies had the same idea, and they all started in the same year. Walmart, Woolco, which doesn't exist anymore, Kmart, which is kind of struggling, and Target. They all opened shop in the same year in 1962. And they all went after this disruption. Is there a way to sell products, a wide variety of products at really low prices in an environment that was not really luxurious? It was like a store. You walked in, you bought your stuff, you got out, but you got the best deal, and they always had stock and inventory, right? And what ended up happening was the mass merchandisers, Sears and Macy's, for example, they got stuck in the middle, right? And on top, they were getting pressured by specialty stores like Nordstrom and Saks Fifth Avenue because they were truly luxurious. So it was really hard for Macy's and Sears to differentiate themselves. And then on the other side, they were getting pressured by Walmart and Target because they were offering really low prices. And so their market share kept compressing over time because they weren't as cool as Nordstrom and they weren't as cheap as Walmart. So they really got stuck in the middle, right? Now, 60 years later, or 55 years later, to be precise, Walmart's stuck in the middle, right? You've got the usual enemies like Target and Aldi that are selling stuff at a massive discount. You've got Kroger that's really come in and doing a really good job on groceries. You've got small format stores like CVS Pharmacy that's taking market share. You've got Costco that's got membership clubs that are driving mass volume for a small number of users that are willing to pay for access to that. And then you've got Amazon that's everywhere. They're doing all of those things, right? So Walmart's really struck in the middle. So here's the problem that we're going to try and address. And this is what Walmart sees as the problem. So you've got e-commerce. It still only represents 5% of Walmart's business. It represents really where the industry is moving. E-commerce is growing almost, triple-digit growth every year. Amazon came out of nowhere, and it accounts for nearly 38% of online retail, up from 32% in 2016. So they're taking massive market share from Walmart, but also in general e-commerce market share. And Amazon has 110 fulfillment centers in the US, and Walmart has 20. So not only are they faster, they also seem to be bigger and growing, right? So what does Walmart do? They decide to go and acquire Jet.com, right? And this is the case that we're going to be exploring a little bit in depth. The marriage between Walmart and Jet. Walmart sees Jet.com as an opportunity for them to be able to get relevant in the e-commerce space. Jet.com is a really small e-commerce retailer that thinks that Walmart can be the right partner for them to help them scale. Okay. So here are the 4 questions we're going to try and answer through this case. So revenue, capabilities, brand, and incentives. And we'll walk through each of those and spend a little bit of time on each. All right. So first, before we start, here's some data for you guys. I'll let you guys read through this really quickly, and then we'll kind of jump into the questions. So let's take a couple of minutes to just go through this. So the key takeaway here is that Walmart is a super profitable company, but they're struggling to make e-commerce work. Amazon continues to grow, and Wall Street is watching very carefully on how it's going to make this transformation happen, right? This is classic digital transformation for a brick and mortar retailer. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna fire up my Menti here.
That was actually one of the things that I mentioned earlier in my presentation, that actually Silicon Valley does not really care about the profits. It really care about the revenue, and it's just really chasing the customer, because everything could be optimized, but the revenue.
Yep, exactly. Okay, so I want you guys to go to this website. I'm just going to throw this up on the screen really quickly. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, and I use Menti in my presentation as well, so they already used it today.
Great, that's excellent. Let me just throw this up here. Let me just get the code from the other slide. Okay. If you go to menti.com and you enter that code, I'll be able to see all of you. I'm just going to switch my screen so I can get to the browser. Give me 1.
Let's add it to the chat. Wait. 850.
Vijay, you there?
I didn't get what we have to do. So I'm on the website.
Yep.
Oh, sorry. Can you guys see me or hear me now?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Oh, okay, great. Can you guys see the question on the Menti?
Yes, there was first the
yes. First it was some options.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on what time scale should revenue be prioritized? Is that the screen that you guys are on?
Yeah.
Great. So let me just explain this really quickly, and then you guys can take the survey. So they're losing money at obviously a breathtaking rate, Jet.com is, and Walmart, on the other hand, is not. So the CEO, Foran, is trying to ascertain on what time scale should the revenue be prioritized. So do we want to take a short-term loss now and build a full Amazon competitor? You want to balance shareholder value and do a little bit of both, but the risk is you really never catch up with Amazon. Or long-term, don't invest in trying to beat Amazon today. Just try and focus on internal capabilities and grow more slowly over time.
Was not able
so while you
to
guys
vote.
are putting that in, sorry, go ahead, Paula.
It was like an image, and I was not able to vote for one of those. I don't know if the rest of the guys.
You have to update
to go to the other slide.
I had the same, and then I needed to enter again, and then now it's in the question.
Oh, okay.
Okay, great. So
I didn't get the option invest in internal capabilities more slowly. What does it mean? Like long term. So what?
Yeah. So let me explain this a little bit more. So on the short term, right? One of the trade-offs that you're making is if you invest a tremendous amount of money in the short term, what's going to happen is your P&L is going to look worse over time, which means that your shareholders are going to see a lower return on that investment. And with the promise that you're going to beat Amazon, right? Now, there's a couple of ways to think about this. Amazon, which was founded in 1994, did not turn a profit for the first 18 years of its existence. They did not make a single dime. They were just a loss-making company. Their stock price grew about 200% of what Walmart's growth of stock price value was in that same amount of time. So Amazon's gotten really good at being able to train Wall Street to be able to invest without having to turn a profit because they're really focused on long term. But Walmart's not there. Walmart's very much a quarter to quarter business. If they make their quarter, the stock goes up. They miss a quarter, the stock goes down. They missed, 4 quarters in a row because they're investing in Jet. Their stock's going to take a massive hit. So that's really what you're trading off in the short term. So if you keep doing that, they may be no medium term. They may be no long term. Walmart may not be able to make it through this, right? On the long term, on the other hand, is if you're investing only in capabilities that you think will not impact the stock price, and you're taking a very long view, there's a good chance that Amazon will not only compete, but will continue to kind of crush you over time. So you may become irrelevant as an e-tailer or a retailer in the long term. So how do you balance those two things best?
I can guess there is no right answer.
No, but if you have
no one knows.
Threat, but it's like if your company has the threat of disappearing eventually, as you pointed out, that over time we had these other companies that, for whatever reason, for a disruptive, event, they were gone. If Walmart didn't do anything, then the risk of them, being obsolete is so high. So I voted for the short term. I went with one.
Okay.
There's always a right answer, and it's called "it depends."
I have a question related to that. And thinking of disruption, what's your view on disrupting yourself? Could you be accelerating it, something that maybe accelerating a trend that does not fit you well, or what's maybe?
Yeah, so I think, and we'll talk a little bit about this in the next question, but disrupting yourself basically assumes that you understand what the disruption actually is, or what the disruptions that you want to counter. So in this example, the whole kind of premise for acquiring Jet was because they believed that they were being disrupted by Amazon. And in order for them to compete, they have to buy another company. They have to acquire another company that has some basic skills in order to compete, right? So based on that, there's an implicit assumption that Walmart cannot do this by themselves. Why is that?
I would think that it's capabilities, that it's how they're like built for, right? They're more built as a retailer, not as a e-tailer, and they don't have expertise, and they don't have knowledge, and they cannot be nimble enough, right? That's why you would do an M&A just to get those capabilities and just be able to play in that market, right?
Okay. What else?
I think they focus on that quarterly result, right? They focus on bringing that quarterly result, and they don't put the right time and effort to building that new capability on their own, maybe.
That's a very important one. Also, no, if you guys all put yourself in the position, just to play this out a little bit, let's say all of you are on the board of Walmart.
Well, okay. I think we are Walmart a bit, right?
Yes. And you guys also get, a large percentage of your compensation, let's say, comes from stock, right? Then some of these decisions become very personal, right? Like, I may not be CEO if I'm like, Kevin Foran, I may not be CEO in 10 years for all this to pan out. But if I'm going to tank the stock price, I'm sure as hell going to get fired in a year.
Do you think that's why companies like Amazon or Tesla have seen these kind of rocket rises? Because they have one central figure who's got the vision, who owns the majority of the stock and can make those decisions, and is willing to take that short-term hit in order to go for long-term value?
So I think I think the best way to answer this question is that the ultimate trade-off here is, I think everyone agrees here that, look, if you're going to become obsolete, you've got to invest in the long term. You've got to redefine yourself. I think that's fairly clear. I think what's unclear is how you do it, right? I think there are different paths doing it. You can disrupt yourself. You can build some capabilities internally. You can acquire another company. You can divest certain parts of your business that are not working well. There's a lot of ways to think about that how. The most important thing is you've got to do it. The biggest threat that most of these companies have is themselves, their own success. They are successful, like Walmart and AB InBev are very successful companies. They're large, they're diversified, they're doing well today. They're being smart by looking out into the future. I think the right answer is a combination of understanding which of those options is going to work for you, right? Everybody is going, will have different capabilities on how they can disrupt. Like, on one hand, I would think that, Microsoft had the option of buying a whole bunch of technology companies, but they chose not to. They somehow waited it out for 7 years, built out Azure, and now they are the second largest cloud provider. So they effectively waited for the long term or the medium term, right? Took the stock hit, moved their business from being software sales to being more cloud-based, right? And then on the other hand, you've got, some very successful acquisitions that have panned out incredibly well for a bunch of other companies. So I don't think there's any right answer on how, but I think the most important thing is what I call Wall Street training. You've got to find a narrative that people can get behind. And I think what Amazon, as an example, as an extreme example of this is, like, Jeff Bezos writes his, annual shareholder letter, and he says this in every single instance. Like, if you guys don't believe in what we're building, we don't want you as a shareholder. Like, don't buy Amazon stock because it's a good value for money today. I don't think it is. He will actually tell you that in writing. The CEO of a company tells you not to buy his stock, right? You only should buy the stock if you believe in the long-term potential of what we're trying to do. So there's something to be said about training Wall Street over time, over multiple quarters, to say, this is what's going to happen. And this is how you should respond to those changes. So you shouldn't view this as I missed a quarter. You should view this as I am deliberately missing a quarter in order to do something for the long term of the company. Right? So there's some, and that is great for external narratives. Back to the point that someone made, that also drives internal narrative. Employees become much more emboldened to say, well, wow, we're making this is real. We're actually making a commitment to saying this is the most important thing at the company at the expense of business as usual. It's now incumbent on me and my employees to see that mission through. Let's go to the next one. Someone said something about capability. So I want to try and click one level deeper so we can get very crisp on exactly what we're trading off against. So you've got.
Do you want to share the screen? Or I think you dropped the share.
They should be able to see it on the Menti, no?
On Menti, you can see only the entries. So the results are seen on your end, right?
That's all I see as well. It's the same screen. I can also see only the entries.
Yes, but once they entered, right? We don't see the results, and you see the results.
Oh,
yeah, it's still refreshing.
Yep.
Let me share my screen then. Good catch. Hold on one second.
Yep.
Can you see that?
Yep.
Cool. Great. Thank you so much. All right. Okay. So these are the options. Before we start voting, these are the options. So I try to make this a little bit more real for you guys. So there are two real options here, and I'm going to call them Walmart and Jet, even though they're part of the same company. The Walmart option is what Walmart does with about 40% of its profits is it uses that money to cut prices. So it effectively subsidizes the cost of product so that they are able to be the cheapest price option across any retailer. That drives a tremendous return in value because A, they've built a great brand on saying that Walmart has the lowest prices. And then they live by it by basically cutting prices so that when you do a price compare, you see that they do have the lowest prices. The second thing that Walmart's doing, and this is really interesting and not a lot of people understand this, is Walmart's been really investing in their grocery line. So for example, they've realized that grocery is a product that's, it's hard to buy online. People want to be able to see and touch and buy, and they're expanding their grocery line, and that's being very profitable, right? So they're kind of reintroducing a product line that did not exist previously. What that does is it improves shareholder value. There's an immediate return on investment. You've got a lot of foot traffic that you can capitalize on. Now, on the other side, on the Jet side, what Jet needs to do is, and if you looked at the fact sheet I shared with you before, Amazon has about 110 distribution centers. Walmart has 20. Does that, just to test the group here, which one do you think is better, the 110 distribution centers or the 20 distribution centers?
Well, it depends.
Depends
On what?
I find better.
On who you're serving.
Yeah,
Okay.
or what your strategy is, because if you want like cost leadership, 20 is better. If you want like service level on time,
Distribution, yes, then it would be.
110 is better, right? So it depends.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So Walmart's done a really good job of keeping their distribution center low at 20 and still able to service about 170 different stores nationwide. That's a pretty good return on investment. They've figured out logistics down to a T. The problem is their distribution centers are not based close to where their customers are. So they can't offer 2-day shipping. They can't offer you a whole bunch of catalog stuff. So you guys have that right? So 110 may not necessarily be better than 20 or the other way around. It's about what you want to do. But in order to compete with Amazon, it's very clear what you need to do. You need to build 110 warehouses, right? So Jet has to build a totally new supply chain, completely new supply chain that is going to sit parallel to what Walmart's already built. And the second thing they're spending a lot of money on is expanding their e-commerce catalog. So they want to be able to sell everything, like Amazon sells everything. They want to sell everything, right? Now, the option there is you obviously will endure higher losses as you build out 100 more or so distribution centers. And you're going to have an unclear payoff on whether people will actually come to you to buy a whole bunch of stuff, right? So, whoops. So let's vote.
And then Vijay, maybe like a quick question. What was sort of the commercial prop of the jet? Why they were able to raise $850 million if they're just another Amazon? Maybe we're missing something. Maybe they have some competitive advantage that we're not looking into.
No, I think that's it. You want to build another Amazon, I think you can raise $850 million. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there'd be very few people that will be willing to take you up on it. But I think if you can say that you're going to be a, $1 trillion company, and if you can take even a 1% share from that company, that's a pretty large number, right? I think people understand that e-commerce is where the market's headed, and they want to try and fund as many players as possible. And by the way, just so you know, if you walked into a VC today and said you want to build an Amazon competitor, you'd probably get laughed out. You wouldn't get $850 million. Okay, so let's test this a little bit. So you've got...
Can I just ask? Sorry to interrupt. It's an interesting statement that you make, right? Is it not too late, right? Is Amazon not already at a level that they're ruling the game and that's, that we're too late
doing it?
I think if you want to play Amazon's game, it's probably too late. But I think the lesson here is to try and not play Amazon's game. So let's test that statement a little bit more. So you've got 19 people that voted to invest in e-commerce. So here's my question, right? And back to maybe like Val's question a little bit as well, which is, if you've got to invest that much money to build 110 distribution centers from scratch by not leveraging any of Walmart's existing supply chain, expertise, people, catalog, why should Walmart do that? I mean, anybody could do that. Like, what gives Walmart the reason to do that? The whole point of the acquisition was that Walmart thought that it could leverage its own expertise to get into e-commerce. But now it looks like that expertise and that footprint and that supply chain value is irrelevant. So should Walmart
needs to keep customer loyalty? Customer loyalty, right? With these kind of like programs like Amazon Prime, right? You get people buying whatever they can online, and then when they're nearby the store, they're going into the store and they're getting some kind of rewards for it. Make it a one-stop shop.
Sure,
which is what they're trying to do.
That seems like an edge case. Like Amazon's able to get to $1 trillion valuation without having a single store. Well, they have a couple of stores now, but like they got there without having stores. So clearly, that's not the bulk of the value. No, loyalty, yes, and we'll talk about loyalty in a second. Loyalty, I agree. I think there's a lot of incumbent brand value that Walmart has, but
I think that's
would
Walmart's
think that
betting on, right?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
They're betting on their current loyalty to move online instead of moving to Amazon. They slow down the bleed.
Okay, great.
Hopefully
we're going to talk about loyalty in the next slide. So let's park that one for a second.
To complement, I think that the hypothesis behind investing in e-commerce would be in like 5-10 years, no one will go to a physical store. Everyone will do it online. So we either jump on that train or we will lose even though our business is strong, at some point of time, people will not want to go to a brick and mortar shop. And
totally.
And this one I don't agree with, because I think there are still people that do want to go to the physical shop.
That's right.
It's not that everybody will be only buying online. So for me, trying to fight Amazon at the same game is not really good one.
Walmart's store traffic, foot traffic in the store has gone up 2% every year for the last 10 years, like clockwork. More people are shopping online. So like, I guess like my question is, why invest in e-commerce? Clearly your business is doing fine. There's some long-term threat, but I guess the question is, why should Walmart do it? Why not set up a private equity company, get a bunch of money, and try and build an Amazon competitor? Like, what value does Walmart bring to the table, other than the edge case of being able to, you know, shop in the store and also shop online? That's a small edge case. But if you're basically rebuilding Amazon from scratch, why does Walmart get to do it?
Maybe they don't need to build from scratch, because if they use their existing supply chain, they can merge with the e-commerce supply chain, no?
But that's what we decided.
But yes and no. It's like, you know, if you need to be everywhere and you have the only 20, but okay, let's imagine for this specific region, you have the only one and you need to have maybe 50 in this one. So then anyway, maybe you can split it and pilot it region by region, but you still would need to grow from 1 to 10 times bigger amount. So it's the proportion would be still the same. So maybe more in a bit agile approach to make the pilot try to, I don't know, cover the one territory, one place, but it still would be the same 10 times. So not 10, 35, right? Yeah, no, 10. It's from 20 to
10. It's 10x.
10.
It's 10x build, yeah.
Yes.
So I have 2 points. The first one is, like, I don't really know all the information that Walmart used to capture about their customers. So here I'm assuming that with Jet, they know their customers firsthand and they can keep up with, you know, like very detailed information about it, which then can help in the future. So that would be one. And the other one related to Walmart is they don't have to open 110. You know, like they don't have to mirror Amazon's footprint. They can use their stores, which was, I guess, technically what they did with many of their initiatives that I think that will come up in the next question that you have. But how many stores have Walmart? Like 10,000 in the country? Is that right? And they don't have to use the 10,000 stores. And, you know, if they use 1,000, they could be better than Amazon.
And I think the average American lives like less than 5 kilometers from a Walmart or something like that.
I was thinking on that, and maybe one thing could be like an omni-channel strategy, right? So you have both e-commerce and a physical store. I'm thinking Best Buy, for example, that they just converge. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I think, so there's about, to answer that question, there's about, I think, 5,000 stores in the US. And I think while it's a great marketing line that most people live within, 5 kilometers, Manhattan, which has the largest density population of the US, does not have a single Walmart. The Bay Area, which is home to about 70 million people, has one Walmart. In Mountain View, it's definitely more than 5 miles away from me. I don't think I've ever gone. Right. So I think population distribution has changed fundamentally in the US since the time Walmart started building out stores. Right. So I think there's a significant build out. So let's go to the next question. I want to talk a little bit about loyalty. Okay. So the top line is basically the companies that Jet acquired after they were acquired by Walmart. So they basically bought this high-end jeans and menswear manufacturer called Bonobos, ModCloth, which is a very millennial-focused, high-end clothing like boutique for teens and young women, and Eloquii, which is kind of a big and tall, but yes, a kind of luxury, apparel maker. So Bonobos, ModCloth, Eloquii, they're all very highbrow. They are relatively expensive. They are definitely not cheap, right? At the bottom, you've got Walmart's brand. Walmart, always low prices, always. Save money, live better. I don't know, but do you guys think that Walmart likes low prices? I think they do. They say it twice, always. They say always twice. They really like low prices. And then now you've got Jet.com that's going after a very different demographic and a very different price point. So now you've got one company that has this overall mantra to always have low prices, combined with an effort to try and attract higher margin purchases and a very different audience. So how do you resolve the loyalty that the Walmart brand has built over the last 50 years of being the lowest cost retailer ever, with trying to now get them to buy into slightly more like luxury or higher margin products, right? So you've got three options. You enhance the Walmart brand, or you enhance the Jet brand, or you create a new brand. And obviously there's a lot of trade-offs here, which is what we're going to talk about. So while we're waiting on this, the results are somewhat clear. I remember the gentleman that spoke about the Walmart loyalty. Do you know why your friends don't agree with you?
Because it's not a sexy brand. Nobody wants to say they bought these jeans at Walmart, right?
I think in that, like, also in my perspective anyway, living in the US, Walmart does not have like a positive brand vibe. Like, I actually do my best to not go to Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
I understand Amazon is very similar, but I probably haven't been to a Walmart in 15 years. And I mean, like, if push comes to shove, yes, they're in very rural areas, so sometimes you have to. But if I'm standing next to a Walmart and a Target, I will go into Target 100% of the time. So I think in that, if we continue enhancing the Walmart brand name, you'll continue to have people that intentionally drive away from Walmart. When I had never actually heard of Jet, I was doing some research on it on the side to see kind of what it was. Actually, it was made by the creator of Amazon, or I'm sorry, it was made by the creator of diapers, which was sold to Amazon. So all a little connected and interesting, but I think in that, on top of it not being like a quote unquote sexy brand, it also has a negative connotation within like the US consumer's eye.
Teresa, thank you for bringing up Target. I was waiting for someone to say that. Like, and we're going to speak a little bit about this when we do the quick debrief. I know Vlad, please keep me honest on time. We're trying to wrap this up quickly, but Target somehow in the same business, started in the same year, has managed to craft for itself a much better brand, a much more flexible brand. If you ask people whether Walmart and Target are different in terms of prices, they say no. They actually think they're able to hold both thoughts in their mind, which is Target is a good retailer, a strong brand value, and they expect it to have low prices. And I think Walmart has failed there, right? Quite significantly in being able to kind of capture the growing preference for people to want to shop in places that are, quote unquote, a little bit more sexy than Walmart. Right? Last question on this before we move to the last one is create a new brand. Like, this kind of takes me back to the same question. If you're Walmart and you've got, you're printing cash all day, every day, and the two things that you thought you could leverage, your supply chain and your brand, are both completely incompatible to your e-commerce strategy, then what gives Walmart the right to compete against Amazon? So that's a rhetorical question. I think it's a hard one, right? I think Walmart finds itself in a spot where it is forced to compete with e-commerce. But I think there are ways in which you can resolve that. We're going to do the last one, and then we'll go to the case analysis really quickly. There's no question here, but I just wanted to share this. someone spoke a little bit about internal narratives, about how to get people together, how to bring people along, how to bring employees along. I'll let you guys read this, but this, for me, paints the underlying picture of what is happening at Walmart, right? So you've got Mark Lore, who's the guy that built diapers and then, built Jet and then came over to run the digital division. And he gets all the credit for Walmart's online grocery business growth, which is basically a buy online, pick up curbside. It's the fastest growing segment at Walmart. They're doing really well at this. It had nothing to do with Jet. It just happens to be an online offering that Walmart figured out all by itself, right? But he gets all the credit. So externally, it looks like if you're a Walmart employee, someone else is taking credit for the work that you did. Well, let's think about incentives, right? Foran, who's the CEO of Walmart, his compensation is directly tied to the operating profit of Walmart's US business, which includes the e-commerce business, right? Now, Lore's compensation, incredibly, is not factored into Walmart's US operating profit at all. So Mark Lore can continue to spend as much money as he wants, make as many losses as he wants, and his compensation doesn't get affected. But on the other hand, the guy that's paying the bills is the one that's actually, taking the brunt from a personal compensation standpoint. And same for all of the other Walmart executives. And the third is probably the most important, is culturally, these two are fundamentally incompatible companies. You've got one company that's all about moving fast and breaking things, and you've got another company that's based in Bentonville, Arkansas, and they are a humble company. They think of them as being the bedrock of the kind of American labor kind of salt of the earth type retailer. Right, so you've got this major cultural fundamental difference between these two companies, right? So I'll wrap up quickly. I'm just going to go back to my slide share here on where I think the company can be focused on. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah. Yes.
Great. All right. So I think Walmart can approach digital transformation in 3 different ways. First is stop thinking about disruption and start thinking about innovations that are more sustainable. A lot of companies want to do the next big thing. And I think in the rush to do the next big thing, they forget the opportunity that lie right in front of them. Right? Opportunities that are better fit for your business, better fit for your culture, are equally massively profitable and will effectively change the way you do business, but not necessarily in directly competing head to head with someone else. Second is investing in assets, not liabilities. We'll talk about what this means. And then I think we spent a little bit of time on this, which is, I don't think you can compete with Amazon head to head. So you've got to change the competition. You've got to fundamentally change how the game is played, right? We spend a lot of time on the left-hand side, which is what I call Amazon, which is a digital native, a company that started digital first. And we think of them as having these massive advantages, which is high-end digital user experiences, disrupting, the middleman, leveraging data, like for personalization. But they also have a lot of cons. They don't have real expertise in core retail. They don't have physical stores, and they generally tend to be unprofitable. Like I said, Amazon still ekes out a very small profit, right? But if you think about folks like Walmart, there's a very large segment of non-Gen Z or millennial segments, like baby boomers, that spend a lot of time at Walmart. That is a segment of people that don't necessarily consider Amazon as their first or even starting point of purchase making. They do have supply chain expertise and leverage. They do have loyalty programs. They have a core expertise in retailing. They have great physical footprint with a lot of daily traffic, and buy online, pick up in store can dramatically reduce cost. So there's a lot of small things that they can do to sustain the business over time without having to focus on disruption. And when you do want to focus on disruption, when you are looking for new lines, think about your assets. Perishable goods like groceries are not well suited to Amazon's supply chain. They just can't do that. the 110 distribution stores that they have are totally automated. They're great for selling toasters and DVDs and books. They're not suited to kind of sell groceries, package them, transport them, inspect them. They can't do that. The other problem is that having a wider selection has diminishing returns. Amazon supply chain has a very big disadvantage, which is they have a wide catalog, but within each selection, they have a very small number of actual products, which does not work well for groceries, where you need to have very few items and you want to have as many of those items as possible. The other problem that Amazon's supply chain is not suited to is variation of quality. One potato is totally different than another potato, but one toaster from a manufacturer is exactly the same as another toaster. So they don't do well at being able to identify quality on an item by item basis within a single SKU. And Amazon can afford to stock all their products as long as they want, but potatoes don't stay as long as you want, right? So they're not a great fit for online, but they are a great fit for Walmart. And I think there's a way in which they can invest in an asset that they have, which is the stores, in order to drive more foot traffic and drive more revenue rather than focus on distribution centers that they don't have. Right. And the last one is really about changing the competition. I mean, Teresa brought up, Target. I think Target was the most forward-leaning when it came to leveraging their brand in small format. So that's a picture of a Target in the Herald Square subway station in New York, where they've got these small format stores that just provide the basics for what they believe that people will need as they're going to or coming back from work. You've got, people that are using their stores to, deliver services. Nordstrom does alterations for you within their store. You used to have people that would provide that service standalone. Now you can get that using the stores. So you're able to drive more foot traffic and more value per person in foot traffic by expanding and changing the actual competition. And the last one's kind of my favorite. You've kind of got this partnership between J.Crew, WeWork, and LinkedIn, where J.Crew basically goes to a WeWork location, dresses people up, and gets them to take very professional screenshots they can put on LinkedIn. Like these are all ways in which you're fundamentally changing the way people see your brand. You're fundamentally changing the way people access your brand. And then ultimately you're exploring new markets that were previously closed off for you. So that's it for me. I'm happy to take questions for as much time as I'm allowed to. I know we're a little bit over time here. So
Jet.com was killed, no? The Amazon really took over, and then they're just using Amazon.com. Walmart.com. What are your thoughts on what they end up doing?
Well, I think there's got to be a reconciliation between what Walmart.com wants to grow up and be, right? I think if Walmart.com wants to grow up and be Amazon.com, I think they have a long and somewhat difficult road ahead. I think if Walmart.com wants to grow up and be a more integrated solution along with their stores, I think they have a better chance of success. I think in the next 2 to 3 years, Wall Street will start to lose patience if none of these efforts really come to fruition. So I think they've got a limited amount of time to make some of these changes happen.
What would you recommend that AB InBev do to innovate? Right? I think we all know what we're trying to do internally, but looking from the outside.
Let me ask you, what's your number one problem that you're trying to solve?
For me personally, speed to market for innovations.
And does that mean, well, that's it's a broad one. Does that mean more revenue? Does that mean
less expenses?
No, I think as a company, we're trying to solve what the consumer wants, right? For the right occasion. They make sure they have the right brand or right style in their hands at the right occasion is what we're trying to solve.
Trying to complement that, maybe is the beer is always historically focused on the mainstream, but now we have all those a lot of things near beer, and the public is getting more sophisticated and trading up, and then beer is under pressure. So I think we do have to go near beer, and we do have to have choices to trade up our business and to have more premium offerings for the people that want to do so, while at the same time defending our core from our competitors. So I think that will be, and that's why innovation plays a key part.
How many brands does AB InBev have?
Well, 500. I don't know.
Right.
Maybe 1,000.
Yeah. No, but we're talking globally. It's not so many.
With all the variations.
Not so many. Globally, it's not so many, guys. So let's also be honest, because we have
it's over 400,
right?
Olga.
Globally,
400.
You've got. Let's be safe. You've got over 100 brands, right?
Yeah.
I would say one of your assets.
It's
right.
more.
At least over 100. So I don't think anyone's going to contest that number, right? My point is, being able to have at least 100 successful brands tells me that one of AB InBev's key assets is being able to grow brand value. So you could, there's an opportunity, like that is a core asset. There's not a lot of companies that will be able to take a brand from scratch or be able to manage hundreds of brands at the same time. That feels like a core asset value. So I would think that you have the internal capabilities to both launch and sustain brands at scale globally. That feels like a competitive advantage to me, right? The second one, I kind of came in on the tail end of the last conversation you guys were having, but here's a really interesting data point that I thought might be worth sharing, which is Home Depot acquired a company to do data analytics for them about 3 or 4 years ago. And they found some very interesting things about their customers. And this is not a boil the ocean, let's do big data sort of thing. It was specifically focused on being able to predict customer behavior. And what they found was, now when I say it, it'll sound really simple, but they found that when a customer bought a tape measure, they were likely in the following 90 days, they were likely to make purchases for over $500. I mean, it's obvious. You're buying a tape measure because you're starting off a project. That's what you do. So they're able to use data in ways like this to be able to incentivize and predict their customer behavior, right? And so I think there's a lot to be said about being able to mine the information that you have on your existing customers and existing brands to be able to understand where your customers are going and what you think they're going to be doing, and being able to skate a little bit to the puck there.
I'm just still reflecting on the statement you started the meeting. I was like the direct relationship with the clients, and I'm just thinking, what then is the future of the big FMCG companies as us, as I don't know, Procter & Gamble, whatever, who doesn't have the direct connection of their clients. So then what is our future then? So now I start to understand better what we are doing now in InBev by trying to also get this BEES platform, e-commerce platform. So just piloting it in specific markets, but it's now make me a bit scared. Then without these things, looks like there is no future. No?
Direct. I don't know about there's no future, but I would say that direct to consumer is the fastest growing brand retailing. People you look at every industry, you've got, people that are selling a mattress and that's all they do. But the way they've crafted their brand is Casper makes the best mattress of all time. So you don't need to go to a store to compare. It may not be. It may not be. And, InBev beer may not be the best either, but let's not get caught up with reality. The point is about how customers feel about your brand, right? And I think if you're able to understand that emotional connection that you have with them, I think you can leverage it.
Yeah, and Vijay, maybe just one of the things that I kept thinking in the preparation of the AB InBev. So what do you think? And I know what the answer is, but still, but what do you think is the main growth factor for the Facebook? What do you think? Why do you think Facebook still, no matter what, it still stays relevant?
I think there are two primary factors. I think the first is we have the luxury of having a product, and this is true for Google as well, or Google search specifically, is we have a product for which we don't make any of our own content. And so production cost, if you take like true cost of goods sold, is technically zero, right? So if you signed up for a new Facebook account today and you didn't have any friends, you wouldn't have any newsfeed. You wouldn't have anything to look at, right? And so we're very reliant, and that's a strength and a weakness. We're very reliant on people interacting and engaging with others on Facebook. I think the second reason for really fast growth is the network effects are real. Facebook is not useful as an anonymous product. It's not like Reddit or Twitter where you don't have to be yourself. The fact that I am myself allows me to connect to my friends, my family, and be able to share a social experience. And so if you're on Facebook, you're inherently kind of pre-programmed to get as many people as you know onto the platform. So that has constantly increased the number of people that have joined the platform over time.
Yeah, and I think, what you're saying, right, and I think where the real innovation, if we think about big I innovation, right, and not like a small I innovation that you have been talking, I think that if the fast-moving consumer goods, such as AB InBev, want to really predict and really ride the sort of customer and the direct consumer wave, is that you almost need to exclude yourself from it. Is that it's almost impossible to predict what will be the consumer behavior in a year or in 2 years and 5 years, right? Maybe even in 5 to 10 years. So how AB InBev can still be included in this value creation change, but not be dependable on the on the content that is being created? Can you somehow invite those independent brewers, independent manufacturers, use your supply chain, use your as a service, your infrastructure as a service, and let people sort of create the content? Let people create, kombucha in your environment. They will pay you for the usage. They will pay you as a fee, as a service, but you don't actually care if they succeed or not. So that's like one of the things that I think Facebook has been extremely useful, is that Facebook, honestly, it doesn't really care if I, Silicon Valley Innovation Center, can find my perfect consumer, if I can tailor my message. They don't really care. Why? Because I will eventually find what actually works for them, and I will be using them more and more and more because I found that growth. But at the same time, I might go bankrupt 5 times before I find my particular customer. But everyone, me and all of my competition, keep paying Facebook because they provide the value, they provide that medium. So they don't really care what final consumer does. They really just creating the platform where everyone is creating the content and trying to find what works for them, for the particular geographic region. And I think AB InBev and others, fast-moving consumer goods, they really have to move from that side. And I think Amazon is also doing the same as well, because they have a lot of marketplace going on, right? Is that how, like, they don't really care if like seller A or seller B succeeds. They still pay for the per transaction fee.
I think we care deeply, but I think the point you're trying to make is well taken. I think we would not be successful as a company if we didn't care about outcomes on the platform. But I think someone here said when we were talking about the Walmart example about trying to experiment with a handful of distribution stores in some areas, and I thought that was a really good way to think about innovation. Is you've got to try, you've got to invest, and you've got to run a handful of tests. And I think some of those are going to be successful, and some of them are not. Here's an example for you guys. How many of you have heard of the Amazon phone? Do you remember they released a phone like 10 years ago? Right. Yeah. Nobody knows about it, right? Because it was a disaster. It was a flaming disaster. But what they learned from it was how to make a consumer product, how to build screens, how to build an interactive voice assistant, which is now the Kindle and Alexa and a whole bunch of other products. And so I think innovation doesn't take straight lines, right? I think you've got to try stuff, and you're going to figure out, and you're going to learn as an organization from stuff that you experiment with.
Then how is the culture in Facebook? Because I have here the culture in Google is they do a lot of projects, they allocate a lot of investment, and they said if we fail, we just learn another way how not to do it. That's
right.
Google. How is Facebook, or how Facebook decides to take a project, and do they really check the ROI? Because I cannot imagine how to check really the ROI for, I don't know, the marketplace or I think in Colombia they launched the dating site or something like that.
Yeah.
A friend of mine of design thinking was helping with that. But then how decide what to invest? Which initiatives are more interesting for Facebook? How do you guys do?
I think, we do also believe that we want to be able to, experiment quickly and try and figure out if it's valuable. I think we think of value within 3 vectors. Is it good for the consumer? Is it good for our advertisers? And is it good for us? And I think we always start with that as the priority. Is it good for the consumer? If it is, we should do it, right? If we believe that we can bring more valuable, features to our consumers, then we should do it. If we believe it can help advertisers reach more people and reach more people effectively, then I think we should do that, because we want our advertisers to see high ROI. We are by far the cheapest place to advertise on the internet, because we provide the best outcomes, right? So that doesn't happen by accident. So we want to make sure that we keep that true. And then the last one, given that we have the luxury of being relatively profitable, we can say that, look, if it's good for consumers and it's good for advertisers, probably going to be good for Facebook. And so I think if you take that ethos of putting your customer first and then laddering up the rest, I think you'll find that in most winning experiments, all 3 will win.
But this how practically works in this. Like, for example, you and your team, you have, for example, a yearly allocated budget that you don't need to justify at all. And then the people say, okay, you have 100,000 a year to just play around and innovate. And if you don't get anything, fine, at least you learn, right? Or how does it work?
I think there's a lot of investment in long term. So someone said marketplace, right? So marketplace is a tab on the Facebook app. We obviously spend a tremendous amount of time and money on it. We make no revenue from marketplace. Our goal is to provide value to consumers. Today, 2.5 years after we launched, today in the US, marketplace sells just over 52% of all used cars. So we have now, from a standing start, become the largest used car sales system or app in the US. Now we have the luxury of trying to figure out what the best way to monetize it, right? And so I think when you think about how it manifests itself in terms of revenue and internal allocation, it's based on goals. So we start off by saying, let's make sure that we get as many listings of cars as possible, right? We set goals based on that. Then we set goals based on how many people are looking at those listings. Let's try and drive engagement. People looking for cars being matched up to people looking to sell cars. How many of those engagements can we hit? And so the teams get gold on things like that, as opposed to, I'm giving you 100 million, I want 200 back. It's more about, I'm giving you 100 million, and here are the goals that are indicative of value being generated to the user. And then I think if you can keep doing that
on traffic, no?
What was that?
So first of all, you are focusing on traffic to get what is the value for the users, to see is testing and the people is get traffic, and based on that, then you are leveraging later on the profit that you can get from that.
Correct.
And on the same time, you are gathering all the data for later on using this data lake that you are building because of the transaction and the traffic to later advertise or monetize this.
We actually don't, because we don't need to, right? All we're trying to do is we're trying to match people that are looking for cars to people that are selling cars. There's not a lot of, it's not a very data intensive process. If you come onto the Facebook app and say, hey, I'm looking for a car under $5,000, like a Honda and red, we don't need any more information than that. We're going to trust you that you're in market for a car that's a Honda, that's red, and is under $5,000.
Because then you can basically sell an advertisement, right, to an insurance company that would be targeted towards this individual for auto insurance or something, right? And that begs another question. Would you be able to basically like provide data to like ABI of like what kind of beverages people are drinking around the world based on what they're posting on their Instagram or their Facebook?
Well, I think,
I'm just wondering capability-wise.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of companies, I'm sure AB InBev and your various brands also advertise. I'm not sure specifically what restrictions we have on advertising for alcohol, but I'm sure in terms of brand. Yeah, so I'm fairly sure that there's a whole bunch of brand building, campaigns that we can run that will basically show you both a combination of how do you continue to bolster your existing brand as well as how do you attract new people to your brand.
Very interesting.
Yeah, we do get a lot of information if you talk to the insights and commercial team.
Yep.
Oh, but I was gonna say one thing, like that you were mentioning the brand. I think it's interesting, like back to what we were discussing and how we communicate or how we engage stakeholders to our digital transformation in supply chain. But it's like, I remember working on the Beat the Green project. I don't know if you guys remember that one that we had in the US to really shorten the lead time for Stella into the US. I think that if we're able to tie, traceability project, for example, to a brand, maybe the business case could be very, I don't know, exciting. And to get the buy-in from the brand team to ensure that, we can work together for a positive return for the business, not just to improve supply chain because we just want to reduce cost, very bland, like we can make it super exciting for the rest of the company.
Yep. Data wins all arguments. Absolutely.
Yeah, those objective decision making that we said is very, very important. Right, just being cautious of time, Vijay. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for giving additional view on how different companies approach innovation. Thank you so much for sharing your experience, and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Of course, thank you, and you guys enjoy the rest of your time. Take care. Bye.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. It was great.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.